Welcome to this new edition of the European Report here in the European Parliament in Brussels. The war in Iran has now been going on for several months as the world economy is taking a hit and our governments in Europe feel pressured to give concessions to the Islamic Republic of Iran in order to reach an agreement, a peace agreement, and save the world economy. But how is this conflict affecting European-Israeli relations? This is the topic for this month's European report. And to discuss this, we have with us in the studio the Vice Chairman of the European Parliament Delegation for Relations with Israel, MEP Bert-Jan Ruissen from the Netherlands. He is a member of the European Conservatives and Reformist political group and often intervenes in debates on Israel, also on anti-Semitism and on freedom of religions during the plenary sessions. He is joining again this month by founding director of the European Coalition for Israel, Tomas Sandell. Thank you both for joining me. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz, and this is the European Report. MEP Ruissen, you have been following the events in the Middle East of the last few months from your position as Vice President of the European Parliament Delegation for Relations with Israel. How would you rate the EU reactions to the war between Iran and Israel and the US? Or do you think that Europe has chosen the right side in this conflict?
Well, thank you for that question. Thank you for inviting me again in your this interview. To be honest, speaking about the response, the EU response on, let's say, the action of the Israel and the US, well, I'm to be honest not very satisfied with the EU response. I would have liked to see, let's say, more support for that action, and also more understanding for Israel's position in this war. What we saw is a response from the EU which was very divided. The EU was very divided. We saw, for example, Spain. Spain closed their military bases. They did not allow the United States to use their military bases for their operations. We saw other member states who choose for a more constructive approach. What we also saw was a clear request from member states, from the EU, for de-escalation. And I can understand that because the situation is very complex. And what we see now is that as a consequence of the war, we have to deal now with a worldwide energy crisis due to the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is blocked. So we cannot continue with the current situation. We have to find a solution somewhere. So I really understand the request of de-escalation. But on the other hand, a more, let's say, constructive approach for the actions of the United States and Israel would have been, well, that's what I would have like to see, to be honest, and that was missing.
And the Iranian regime is still in place?
The Iranian regime is still in place, yes. Well, we took some positive actions, I think, as EU. What we finally put the Islamic Revolutionary Guard on the list of terror. That was a positive step, I think. But in the end, indeed, regime is still there, and maybe there's also a kind of maybe miscalculation of the United States. You can wonder what was the plan of the US? Did they have a clear plan? Maybe they had the impression that they could dismantle the regime quickly in a few weeks, but indeed the regime is still there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tomas Sandell, you are a long-standing advocate for Israel here in the European Parliament since many years. You have also spoken up against the atrocities, repression of the Islamic Republic of Iran against its own population. What is your assessment of the role of the European Union in this war?
Well, I think it started well. And there's a parallel to what happened on October 7. It started well in the European Union with expressions of solidarity. But similar to this conflict, it started well. And I recall very strong statements here from the European Parliament, from the President, to say that this regime cannot remain in power for many weeks. Those were the anticipations. Today, I'm afraid to say that the EU has lost its course. I'm not referring primarily to the President of this Parliament, but to the High Representative Kaja Kallas. Just 2 days ago, she made a press conference where she thanked Pakistan for their constructive role in negotiating a peace agreement or a ceasefire. And she said she is looking forward to starting direct talks with the Islamic Republic, the sooner the better. This is very inconsistent when we are looking at how Europe is dealing with the war here in Europe, the Russian aggression in Ukraine. If we listen to what Kallas says and other leading EU figures, is that there's only one solution. Russia needs to be defeated, full stop. If that is the case with Russia, why is it completely different with this brutal regime that is not only causing destabilization in the region, it has its own terrorist proxies in Europe, but more importantly, it's murdering its own population. This clearly is in contradiction with what we call European values.
So again, appeasement.
Appeasement, and again, when we, in just a few days, we'll be celebrating the anniversary of D-Day. Just imagine we'd had a similar situation, a European institution having a debate days before D-Day and say, well, listen, we have to de-escalate, we have to look for a permanent ceasefire. Just imagine what Europe would look like today. During those times, there were determination, there was understanding of evil, black and white. Today, it seems like everything is up for grab. As long as inflation is low and the gas to our car is low, everything is fine. As long as they open the Strait of Hormuz, this is not the Europe that I believe in. This is not the Europe that the founding fathers were dreaming of. This is a Europe that has lost its course.
And do you agree with MEP Ruissen when he said that maybe there was some kind of miscalculation from the US side?
Partly yes, but partly no, because I think that at that time, the US should have stayed the course. They should not have stopped in the middle. And I think now President Trump is paying the price. He's trying to have it both ways, to declare a victory, but at the same time going in direction of compromises. So I think there could have been a better course. But in order for that to succeed, Europe should have stood firmer on the side of its best allies, transatlantically and in the Middle East, Israel and the United States.
MEP Ruissen, let's speak about your native country, the Netherlands. This country was for many years considered as one of the best friends of Israel in Europe. Now you have a new government led by Prime Minister Rob Jetten, and this government suddenly is at the forefront of criticizing Israel and even suggesting that the EU should boycott goods produced in the dispute territories, and we saw also calling for a review of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. I would like to know what has happened over the years in the Netherlands, which has changed the Dutch attitude against Israel. Why this shift?
Indeed, what you said, the Netherlands was for decades one of the closest allies of Israel. But unfortunately, as you said, that is not the case anymore. I think we have to realize that, we have a war in the Middle East, several wars in the Middle East, but we have also to deal with what I call information war worldwide. And I'm afraid that I have to conclude that in the Netherlands, and also in some other countries, but in the Netherlands, Israel is losing this information war. On a daily basis, our mainstream media are blaming Israel for everything on a daily basis, using the framing, which is also used by the UN, the framing that everything what happens is due to the fact that Israel is taking, in their opinion, disproportion actions and so on. And do not forget also the influence of the different NGOs which are really active. Do not forget the influence of the Islam, the radical Islam.
And domestic pressure.
Domestic pressure in the Netherlands. So all this together has a big, great negative effect on the public opinion. And as a consequence, you see that also political parties are changing their position. And it is really a shame indeed, because since the information is so one-sided, the whole context, nobody is talking anymore about the whole context. Nobody is talking in the Netherlands anymore about what happens at the 7th of October, for example. So it's a shame what is happening in my country.
But like in some countries like Spain, who is also very critical against Israel, it's more the government that is anti-Israel than the population. Is this the same case in the Netherlands? Is the population in the Netherlands against Israel?
Well,
or it's
the government, the current government is quite anti-Israel.
The coalition.
A coalition, that's what I mean. And we have a small coalition, but it's just three parties. Yes. You don't have a majority.
Yeah.
And I also, and maybe that's the good news, I also see still in the Netherlands, when you speak with people in the street, still also strong support for Israel. So our society is very divided. So we really have to work also in the Netherlands on, better information about what is really happening, telling the real story.
Okay. Tomas, Sandell, let's start with culture, from politics to culture. Israel is under pressure here in Europe, especially from the cultural elites. We saw it recently in the Eurovision Song Contest in Vienna. We saw also it when Israeli conductor was boycotted in several countries like Belgium, also the Netherlands, I think. And the Netherlands was one of 4 countries which boycotted the Eurovision Song Contest because of the Israeli participation. However, despite bullying and criticizing the Israeli singer came in the second position after Bulgaria. And this was thanks to a strong support from the viewers. So how can you explain, and that's what I discussed with MEP Ruissen, how do you explain this discrepancy between the cultural elite and the people in general?
Yeah, I think there are three points that I would like to make. First of all, it's the Israel haters who have politicized the whole Eurovision. Secondly, there are all these conspiracy theories. How could it be that Israel almost won? And it goes back to these medieval conspiracy theories of the Jew who sort of controls everything, even how people vote in a competition like this. And that's of course cause for concerns in itself. But my third point is probably the most important one, and Bert-Jan was mentioning it already, that there is a discrepancy between what we call the cultural elite. To that I would include media. So you have academia, media, culture, more generally speaking, and people on the streets. I saw a Jewish friend making a comment to say that, well, in the past, those who caused the pogroms, they were uneducated people, peasants. Today, they usually have academic degrees or a diploma from Princeton. He was trying to make a joke. And someone commented and said that this is nothing new. Even in Nazi Germany, and I know from my own country that those who showed great sympathy with the Nazis, many of them were very well educated. And those around the Wannsee conference table who planned the execution of the Endlösung, the final solution, a majority of them have doctoral degrees. So it leaves us with this question, troubling question. Education in itself is not an antidote to anti-Semitism. I would continue to say that education, historically speaking, when you would go to the Ivy League, to the best university, or to my university in Finland, what you saw, the inscription you would see at these prestigious universities is, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And it puts education in its right context, but it also gives a very deep meaning of who we are as a civilization. The Hebrew Bible explains who we are, it gives us our values, and education detached from a sound value system doesn't lead anywhere constructive, and that's what we saw in Nazi Germany, that's what we see today. The most intelligent people at our university, they have the most sophisticated conspiracy theories. So we need to rethink the role of education.
So education and values together.
Exactly.
MEP Ruissen, a lot of criticism against Israel has been directed to the current government under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and especially against two of his cabinet ministers, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, who represent the far right in Israel. We know that in the coming months, September or October, we don't know exactly, Israel will go to the polls and elect a new government. Do you think that a change of government in Israel will also have as a consequence a change of EU attitudes again towards Israel?
Yes. I really think that a change in the government in Israel can be really helpful, because what we saw and still see is that the involvement of some far-right parties in the government is very harmful, also harmful for the relation. When you see the provocations, different provocations of Ben-Gvir, recently, for example, with images of
the flotilla.
With the flotilla, how he treated the activists. That was just provocation. That's so negative, also for the image of the Israeli government. So That's not what I saw last years. The fact that the far rights are participating in the government had a really negative effect on the relations with Israel. So I really would like to advise the new government and my colleagues in Israel, please try to create a bit more moderate government. Do not create any more government with far rights. I'm not elected member of the Knesset, so it's their responsibility. But if they ask my advice, I would say, well, please think about indeed the new coalition, and especially for the relations with the EU, government with, let's say, a bit more constructive approach, no connection with far right, can be very helpful, in my opinion.
Tomas, Sandell, same question to you. Is European criticism against Israel simply criticism against the current right-wing government? And do you think that this would stop if Israel elects, I would say, a more centrist or left-wing government? Would this change the situation?
So I partly agree with what Bert-Jan is saying, and based on my observations the last 25 years, of course, there is when there is we've had Labour governments, it tends to be easier to deal with the European institutions. I would add 2 points. One is, of course, that we have to remember that the current government could have looked very different if it wasn't for this obsession with not sitting in the same government as Bibi Netanyahu. Because remember, both Lapidus and Lieberman, they said under no circumstances are they going to sit with Netanyahu, and I think that's
everything but not Netanyahu.
Everything but Netanyahu, and I think that's very childish. It's very, it doesn't help anyone. So the prime minister who was, and I think still is, the most popular political persona in Israel, he didn't really have a choice. But of course, I would agree with what Bert-Jan is saying. I think there should be a unity government. This is not the time for polarization. And also, we have to remember that Israel, after October 7, is a very different Israel. So when it comes to security policy, there's very little difference between Labour and the center and the right. And I think that would give a good basis for a unity coalition. But I also have to add one thing, and that is that in the international system, we cannot, as Bert-Jan said, it's up to the Israeli citizens to elect their parliament and who will then appoint a government. It's not for the European Union or anyone else to give conditions and say, well, if you elect this particular government, we will make life easy for you. I think that's very disrespectful of the concept of democracy and disrespectful of the concept of national sovereignty.
Yes.
MEP Ruissen, we saw Hungary recently elected a new government with, I would say, a more pro-EU prime minister. So with that, Israel no longer has a country in the EU which could block certain policies against Israel in the European Council. We saw Hungary every time blocking any decision. Do you think this will change EU policies toward Israel in an even more negative direction, or will other countries step in and take the role of former Prime Minister Viktor Orban? We saw it in Slovenia. There is a change. Every time there is a change of Prime Minister, there is a change of a Prime Minister that is no more pro-Palestinian. What do you think it will happen in the next months?
Yeah, well, indeed, we saw a change in the government of Hungary, indeed. That can have an effect on our policy related to Israel. But on the other hand, I saw also the government of Czechia, and they said, well, we shall never accept, I will say it in my own words, we will not accept a suspension of the association agreement, for example. So I still believe that we have still some countries who are really willing to support and also to use their veto rights if needed to block very negative, let's say, initiatives related to Israel.
So Israel is is not isolated like.
No, it's not isolated. No, it's good to know also for our colleagues in Israel. Israel still has friends in Israel in the EU. Yes, sure.
Okay, that was all for this edition of the European report. Thank you, MEP Bert-Jan Ruissen and Tomas Sandell for this discussion on a very interesting discussion on issues affecting the EU-Israel relations. We will see in the next month what is happening with the elections in Israel, which will certainly impact also these relations. To our viewers, as always, if you like our program, please feel free to share the YouTube link with your friends and colleagues. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz, and this has been the European Report. See you again next month.